Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have a very cool unboxing today with a bunch of vintage figures that I'm really excited to have in my collection, and it's quite a bit to get through, so we're not going to spend too much time on each of the figures, so we will probably not talk about them too much, but we'll bring them in, show you guys what I have here, as there is pretty overloaded box here of dinosaur figures. So the very first one that I'm going to bring in, and actually I'm going to bring in quite a few. We've got that one. We've also got this one, which he doesn't want to stand right now. Nope. There we go. We got him up. And we've got this one here. So some pretty cool looking figures. I'm pretty certain that these are Thunder Beasts figures. And they're really cool looking figures overall. Definitely something that I'm pretty happy about. If you can recall, a ways back I did an unboxing of a few figures that included some Thunder Beast figures that I was really excited to add into my collection, and I've been searching for those larger ones. I think these ones are part of the Thunder Beasts line as well, but they're the smaller size figures, potentially. Again, I'm not too familiar with these figures, but I'm pretty sure that's what they are. So I'm definitely going to be looking into these guys to figure out exactly which species they're meant to portray, and just learn a little bit more about these kind of smaller Thunder Beast figures that I'm unfamiliar with. But very cool looking regardless. Really happy to have those guys because they're figures that aren't very common, especially here in the United States. And then there's this kind of goofy looking Tyrannosaurus Rex that I know nothing about, but I can tell you he seems very cheap and not very good. And then there's also this guy here, which is a very interesting Triceratops. He almost looks like he should be part of like the Imperial line, but at the same time he's very different than the older kind of Imperial figures. I'm not sure who makes it. It doesn't say on the bottom, and it's a very interesting looking interpretation, kind of a weird shape to the body as it goes down so low and then up really high in the hip region. But very interesting Triceratops that I've actually never seen before, so that's pretty cool that it's a figure that has been completely unheard of by me. Then we've also got this really goofy looking Stegosaurus right here. You can see he's just like super weird looking. He's got like the strangest looking head, but also another really cheaply made figure. Nothing super impressive for sure. Then we have a Disney's Dinosaur Carnotaurus, and this is a beautiful Disney's Dinosaur Carnotaurus. That may be my favorite one that I've seen, potentially next to the larger version. It's really nicely done overall, and nice and small also, but it's a beautiful, beautiful Disney's Dinosaur Carnotaurus. See, if I bring it up to the camera here, it looks really good as far as the detailing aspect and the paint application as well. Kind of has that menacing look to him there with his lips sort of coming up and everything, but really nice looking figure for sure. And you know me, I love my Carnotaurus. And then we have a few very interesting figures, which I may actually end up finding again throughout this box. There may be more of them, but they're very weird looking, but actually quite nice looking, honestly. And I don't know much about them. I'm really not familiar with the figures at all. But there's quite a few of them in here, some of which have bowed legs, and unfortunately do not stand. But you can see they're overall really nice looking. They're nicely detailed. They don't have the best paint applications or anything, but they're not bad either. And I'm definitely interested to learn more about these figures because overall they're quite nice. And I mean, nowhere near like nice by today's standards, but from whenever these were made, which let me see if I can look on the underside here. So I can't see a date, but it says Scientific Toys on the underside. So maybe that's my clue to look into these a little bit more. I'll be able to find out about them. But really cool figures. I'm definitely interested in this line as well. And then we've also got a Safari Ltd Tyrannosaurus Rex right here, who doesn't want to stand it though. No, he's definitely got a little bit of a bow in his legs that I'm going to have to apparently fix. And then there's also this little Triceratops, who I'm kind of thinking I might know who makes this, but I'm not totally sure. But it's a pretty nice looking Triceratops as well. Not, again, the best Triceratops in the world, but actually quite nice overall. And then we get these guys out of the way here. And we've got some more cheapies in here with a few of your random dollar store, whoops, I knocked him over, random dollar store style figures. And we've got a sort of okay looking Parasaurolophus cheap figure. And then there's actually this one, I'm going to move these guys. There's this one sauropod right here. It's like an Apatosaurus. I've always really liked this figure because he's in like a seated position, and it's so different and so unique compared to so many figures that you normally see. Even though it's like a cheap dollar store style figure, I always thought that that kind of seated position and just generally the overall body looks pretty nice. It was so unique and so different that I've always been drawn to this figure for that reason, and it's something that I've wanted to repaint for a while. I do have like 2 of these guys already, so I'm definitely going to repaint one at some point soon, just because it's such a unique looking figure, and overall I don't feel like the sculpt is bad by any means, so it's definitely something that I quite like. There was also this cheap-looking theropod. Not sure who he's meant to be because it's not a very obvious-looking figure as far as like who he's designed to portray, but still a pretty fun figure. And then there's also this guy, which I assume is some sort of a strange Ceratosaurus. Doesn't want to stand right now, but he's actually kind of like a soft, squishy feel, which is interesting. I don't know who makes this one either, but he's kind of got an appealing look, sort of, for being a cheap dinosaur figure. So there are quite a few cheap figures in this box, but still some pretty fun-looking figures overall. And then this is a figure that I always love to encounter because it is such a strange figure. It looks like it's meant to be like a raptor, but at the same time it kind of has like a head sculpt like a Hypsilophodon. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but I always laugh every time I see it because it's so ridiculous looking. It's like a herbivorous raptor of some kind. I don't know. It's strange, though. And there was also this really cool... Whoa, he doesn't want to stand because his feet are in the wrong position. This really cool Chapmay Velociraptor, a really nice-looking figure. I love the paint scheme on this. Super flashy looking with the way it's painted. Something that I always feel like these smaller Chapmay Raptors have a very Kenner feel to them, aside from the head sculpt being kind of ugly. But definitely a figure that I was really happy to have. I actually have one other version of this already. I'm happy to have now a second paint variant I've actually never seen before. We also have another kind of cheap figure here, which potentially could be like a Diplodocus or something. I'm not entirely sure. Again, it's another figure that's just kind of like a random, cheap, hollow, potentially a dollar store style figure that has a decent sculpt. I mean, it doesn't look terrible, but it's just not really that great either. And then, randomly enough, there is also a Michelangelo figure in here as well, which is just the strangest addition. And then a figure that I really was happy to see in here, I think it's a Micro Machines Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I'm not entirely sure. It certainly looks like one. I actually don't have many Micro Machine figures as far as the dinosaurs go, so I'm not 100% sure on this, but it definitely looks like that is what it is, and it's actually really quite nicely done. A very nice figure. I don't know if it's a Jurassic Park one or if it's just a random Micro Machines Rex, but a really cool figure. And then there is also this very large, somewhat strange but kind of appealing looking Pachycephalosaurus figure that was also included in the box. Definitely a very vintage look with the tripod position for the body and everything, so it's obviously an older figure, but I actually quite like it. I think it's quite nicely sculpted for being kind of that vintage interpretation of a Pachycephalosaurus, and you can see here in my hand it's also quite large, which is also a very appealing factor to the figure. Now, the last few figures here that are kind of like the entire reason I wanted this lot of dinosaurs are from a company that, well, I shouldn't just say a company, there's actually 2 companies, but UKRD and AAA, there are 2 companies that I've been really interested in their figures over the past year or so I've been really trying to kind of expand my collection of those figures, and I got quite a few here in the box. The very first one would be, I think, an old AAA Stegosaurus, which is a quite nice figure aside from the fact that it only has 2 Thagomisers for some reason. These old AAA and UKRD figures certainly are not accurate in any way, shape, or form, but they're definitely loads of fun, I can say that. Then we have a very nice looking and somewhat chubby looking AAA Triceratops as well. Pretty cool looking figure. Again, for their time, the figures were decently well sculpted. Like, they really included a lot of detail. Maybe not so much paint application, especially in comparison to what you get often nowadays. But overall, I mean, they're not bad at all. Not by any means. And again, quite appealing looking. There's also an Ankylosaurus, which I also believe would be a AAA figure. Definitely did not have the Ankylosaurus prior to this, so that is very exciting. It's quite nice looking. overall. I mean, again, it's not as nice as what you'll see nowadays, but considering when the figure was made and the type of figures we were most often receiving then, it's really quite nicely done. And then one of my favorites as far as the UKRD line goes is this Protoceratops, and I actually do have one of these already, but I have an alternate paint scheme, so I was really psyched to be able to find an alternate variant of the Protoceratops and get a new color scheme in my collection because it looks really cool, and I've always been a fan of this kind of chubbier version of Protoceratops. I just really quite like this very vintage look to the Protoceratops, so again, an alternate color variant is really exciting to me of that figure. Then we also have a AAA Brachiosaurus, which is not a bad figure either. Pretty fun looking Brachiosaurus. Again, these guys are all super vintage, super old school. You can see the tails dragging on the ground and everything, and that's one of the reasons why I think I love them so much, but definitely another really cool figure. And again, I mean, for the time, that sculpt and detail, that scale detail and everything that you can see, well, it's more like a skin textured appearance, is really quite nice. We've also got a really beautiful vintage looking, of course vintage looking, UKRD Apatosaurus, or potentially a Brontosaurus, I would actually imagine. It would probably, no, actually it is an Apatosaurus, so look at that. So we've got an Apatosaurus here as far as the UKRD figures go, another really nice looking old school style figure. Love the old school vintage style look of dinosaur figures, and these AAA and UKRD figures are pretty much perfect for that style of figure. We've also got a Pachycephalosaurus as well, again sporting the tail-dragging tripod position, but very nicely sculpted. These figures are very impressive, if you ask me. It's shocking that it took me as long as it did to kind of get into them, because they're really, really appealing looking, and there's just so many. There's so many different kinds of these figures as far as, like, paint variants and everything goes. Just a lot to get a hold of. As well as a really nice UKRD Parasaurolophus, you can see here, looking really nice, again, up in the tripod position, about as old school looking as it gets as far as the positioning of a dinosaur. That's almost a perfect appearance to the kind of vintage Parasaurolophus. Gorgeous looking figure for sure. And then we've got the UKRD Allosaurus, which is another figure that does not want to stand, but is also a figure that I've really been a big fan of for quite some time. Beautiful looking sculpt as far as that kind of old school look for an Allosaurus. This is pretty much what Allosaurus looked like in all of the books and everything when I was a child growing up. It really looked genuinely like this, so I think UKRD captured the Allosaurus quite perfectly as far as that kind of old school look goes. And the final figure that we have here is the Edmontosaurus, and this is a figure that I did not even realize existed until recently when I had seen someone posting about it on Instagram, and then I kind of became obsessed with the figure, and I ended up getting a smaller version because there are actually smaller and larger versions of it, and now I have the larger version as well. Of course, there are alternate paint variants out there that I'll have to try to get a hold of as time goes on, but considering the rarity of these figures and the sometimes expensive price tags on them, it'll be a little bit of a task and a little bit of a lengthy wait to try to get a hold of those, but I am psyched to now have yet another of these Edmontosaurus figures in my collection as far as these older. I believe this one is a AAA figure, but super awesome figure, and a ton of really nice figures here that I have in this box. That I acquired this box for right around the $20 range, so it was like a ton of awesome stuff. I think it was actually like 25 bucks, but it was like a ton of awesome stuff for a really nice cheap price. So some more awesome dinosaur scores for you guys. So as always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.